all of our counselors, and we have a number of guests who will be introduced in the when their time comes up on the agenda. Do we have anything for the open forum? See lots of shaking heads, going once, going twice. All right, we'll close the open forum and move on to the consent agenda. So the consent agenda has the typical 3 things on it: the approval of this agenda, the approval of the previous meeting minutes, the approval of the bills, and 2 additional things: Gunflint Tavern tobacco permit as was submitted, and travel reimbursement policy update provided by Finance Director Dunsmore. So unless someone would like to pull one of those items for discussion, I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
I would like to pull both the Gunflint Tavern and the travel reimbursement from the consent agenda.
So is that a motion to approve those 3 items then?
Approve the 3 items and take the other 2 into the agenda proper.
Okay, there's a motion. Is there a second for that?
Jay, I don't know if we can do it. I also wanted to maybe add to the agenda, if we could talk just a little bit, touch base on the administrator job description conversation we had last time. You and I were going to come back, and after we had met and talked to the council, if we could just add that at the end.
Yeah, I think we can do a little update on that. I don't know if we should get too much into the weeds about it, but yeah, I mean, if we want to add that to the agenda, we can add that to the bottom of the agenda. All right, so we've got an item added to the agenda, and then we've got the the approval of the consent agenda, the first 3 items on the consent agenda. Is there a second for that? Well, just for the sake of conversation, go ahead.
I can second.
Okay, everybody's being nice and quiet tonight. Okay, motion and second. Any further discussion on the consent agenda?
No.
All right, we'll go to our roll call vote for the consent agenda. Anton, your vote.
Aye.
All right. Kelly, your vote.
Aye.
Michael, your vote.
Aye.
Craig, your vote.
Aye.
And I'm an aye as well. Consent agenda passes. We will then, how do we want to do this? Do we want to do the tavern tobacco permit and the travel policy, reimbursement policy after the pound discussion?
Yes, I would think that would be best.
Yeah, because we've got guests. May as well not keep them hanging in there. All right, so let's move right on then to the bulk of our meeting. We've got a number of people here. We've got representatives from the county, from the county sheriff's department, from the Arrowhead Animal Advocates group, and we're here to talk about the pound. So to provide a little bit of direction for the conversation, I feel like there needs to be some information sharing to get everybody up to speed on where we're at, where we were at, what groundwork has been laid, and then we can start having a conversation about what the next steps are. I don't anticipate that we will really be able to get, well, I don't feel very comfortable making a lot of big overarching calls today. I'd like to let the information sink in a little bit. So with all of that said, I think that it probably makes the most sense to pass things off to Pat and James so that you guys can get us up to speed on what has happened and where we're at right now. So, shall we?
Okay, I can start. Well, we have been having discussions about animal shelter or dog pound. We have been working with Chris Skildum has agreed to donate his time to be the general contractor for this project. Mark Peterson has donated his time to make some nut architectural drawings, but very close to architectural drawings for a building based upon what we feel our needs would be and what the state of Minnesota requires us to have for an animal shelter. So we, does everybody know that we had requested to use one of the lots in the EDA? That request was denied, and I don't blame them for denying it because the lot has quite a bit of value, and just to throw a dog pound under, I totally understand that. So we've been having discussions on the county level, trying to determine a piece of land or something that we can use for a dog pound. Currently, we are using the sheriff's garage with a wire crate. And we haven't had to use it yet because the deputies have been doing a fantastic job, and the dispatchers have been doing a fantastic job of locating owners and getting the pets there. Where we will run into difficulties is if we have to seize an animal, if it's deemed a dangerous animal, and we have to quarantine it, or if no owner can be found. Or the other possibility is that we've had in the past is if the owner passes away and there's no family members to take the pet, we need places to put the pet till it can be taken care of properly. So that's kind of where we're at. We're really nowhere, to be honest, other than drawings, and we know what we need. We just don't know where to put it. I'll let James talk.
Thank you, Sheriff Eliason. So the other thing that we're looking at is what is the need for the facility, and that so the data that we have. I asked Sheriff Eliason to look at animal calls that they've had over the last 5 or so years, and he looked through. There were over like 1,600 records about animal calls, but the ones for which he could find a reference to the dog pound amounted to, I think it was 104 since the beginning of 2016. So that's about around 20 a year. And so assuming that, each time a dog is brought in, it stays in the pound for maybe 2 or 3 days. I don't know. I'm sure they stay longer sometimes. But we're talking about a facility that potentially is not occupied much of the time. And so that really got us thinking about what are the alternatives to building a facility. And so there was discussion about possibly contracting with a local kennel or boarding facility to put up animals when we need that service. The feedback we got was that most kennel owners probably would not want to take in or would not be able to take in a stray animal whose medical history is unknown and who might pose a health risk to the other animals in the facility. So it's not clear that that's going to be a path forward. But what I do know is, at this point, this is not a budgeted expense for the county. And so, and I know that, or at least from what I've heard from Administrator Roth, is that the city has a very small amount in its budget for the ongoing operation of the former dog pound, but that there's no money set aside for a capital expenditure. So that still leaves us, uncertain about if we are going to find a location for a new facility, which, as the sheriff indicated, we haven't been able to do yet. If we can cross that hurdle, what does the pro forma look like? I understand that the Arrowhead Animal Rescue has some funding that they could put toward the construction of a new facility. I don't know what that dollar amount is, nor do I know what the full cost of putting in a building would be. And we're not talking about something elaborate, but to the extent that we would have something that would have, electrical service, heat, and, water, so that I don't know if it would have a bathroom, but at least a sink so that you could do basic cleanup if there are messes created by the animals. That could run into a little bit of money. And so I think there's a lot more discussion we have to have. I think there's a lot more information that we need to gather to determine how we should move forward.
Administrator Yerke, can you give us more of an idea of what that information would need to be? I mean, as far as you gave us some stats about the usage, Sheriff Eliason has information about construction, and with the donation, that super generous donation from those two folks to help with the construction itself. You know, that's a fair amount of information, although I definitely admit that there are a lot of things we don't know. What can you give us some examples of the things we need to find out?
Well, so I mean, just thinking about where this would be located, using the Cedar Grove Business Park as an example, you know, the one obstacle we ran into in considering that space, notwithstanding the issue that the lot that we were looking at, the EDA board wasn't willing to give up, is just the whole site has a lot of wetland issues, and there would have to be remediation before you could even think about starting to build something there. And the cost of that remediation, putting in a stormwater catchment structure of some kind, would be very expensive. And just the design of something like that would be expensive. And so there would, for a location like that, there would be some significant costs before you even got to a place where you could start putting up some kind of structure. And so given that there are a lot of variables, if we had a lot that had ready access to utilities, where the utilities could be put in for a fairly low cost, conceivably the cost of doing the project would be relatively low, possibly under the six-figure level. But I can also see where, if there are issues like stormwater and wetlands that need to be addressed, it could run into well above the low six figures. So that's where my concern is. And, we want to be a partner with the city and with the Arrowhead Animal Rescue and the animal community here in Cook County. But we also want to proceed in a responsible way and with full knowledge of what we're getting into.
Yeah, roger that. In past conversations that the city has had, the city has also come forward and said that we are interested in being a partner. We also have said that we need to figure out what that partnership looks like. So what level of service are we providing? What is the cost sharing? And what level of service does the community need? So those are some questions that I think we need to answer as well. I think we've gone through that exercise before in the past. I'm just not sure that we actually got to some sort of a solution that is standing, or else that carried through the rest of the process. The rest of the design and location process. So it does kind of seem like we took one step forward, two steps back, kind of. But I definitely think that the interest is there, but we need to figure out what we're interested in, and why, and how much that's going to cost, and then what we're all going to bring to the table for that. Like you said, Administrator Yerke, that the city we have always budgeted a little bit of money for the utility expense for the pound, and that's always been our contribution. So not sure what it looks like going forward, but yeah, I don't know if there's.
I think the biggest question is, where is this thing going to go? If we are going to partner on putting up a new facility, where do we put it? And there are some factors that I think speak to a need to make sure it's fairly close into Grand Marais. There may be some, the county has a number of tax forfeited properties, but they're not necessarily in locations that would be appropriate for this kind of thing. And I think it needs to be close into town because, you have volunteers who are staffing it. The sheriff's office is responsible for picking up stray animals, and the law enforcement center is here in town. And so just from a logistical standpoint, it would make a lot of sense to have it be either in or very close to Grand Marais.
Right, I agree with that. So where does that leave us? Seems like we've identified a couple of things that we need to do. May be kind of homework kind of type things. I'm not sure exactly what the next step is, to tell you the truth. You've brought forward some statistics saying that that the number of animals that have showed up in the facility, 2021 a year, that kind of a thing. I think we might have to do some thinking about that. I don't know. What are other counselors? You guys have anything to weigh in on this, or anybody else?
I guess I'm really confused as to how the county, I don't know if it fell in their lap, but how the county has the lead on this. The pound has always been the city's because we have the ordinance, the leash ordinance. It was put there by the city. It used to be maintained by the city. Arrowhead Animal Rescue, which had a different name and changed years ago, volunteered to assist us with some of the animals. I mean, they were told in February on a Friday they had to be out over the weekend, which as a city councilor, I didn't know that. So I'm a little confused as to how I feel like we fell off the map on this for something that's ours and we've known about. So I guess that doesn't fix the problem moving ahead, but I somehow feel like we need to be the lead on this. And if other counselors disagree, I'm willing to hear thoughts, but this was within our city. It was the city dog pound. So I like that we have numbers available and that we could partner with the county to maybe do something to help animals in all of the county, not just the city. But I'm a little frustrated that we really haven't talked a whole lot about it for 6-8 months, and we're sitting in this quandary with going, well, we have information, what do we do? I mean, we're going into the busy season and we have animals that need taken care of, and we have ordinances in place. So are we going to follow the ordinances and do something soon, or are we going to drop the ordinances and just let everything go? I don't know what other counselors think, but I'm a little frustrated.
I think, Kelly, you put your finger on really the conversation that we need to have, and that is, what level of service do we want to have? Do we want to maintain those ordinances that say that that pound services that's something that the city's going to do, or are we going to change that somehow? I can give you a little bit of background on how this developed the way that it did. The animal advocates, the city, like myself, Mike, and Sheriff Eliason sat down a number of times, and we discussed, well, what are we going to do? How are we going to move forward? And there was a lot of back and forth at that point about, well, whose responsibility is this, etc. And at one point in there, and I'm not saying this to throw you under the bus, Pat, but Sheriff Eliason said, hey, this is, the county, like the sheriff's department provides this service for the city. That's a responsibility that they'll take up. And
did it get dropped on them when we defunded our city police department?
In the late 90s, you mean?
Well, yeah, if we didn't have police officers to follow the ordinances and we contracted with the county, didn't it land with the sheriff's department to do that? Not so much that they had responsibility, but I mean, we defunded our city police department, which took care of those things and used the pound.
I suppose that's where the responsibility would be now. The conversations I'm talking about were, a year and a half ago. So I guess that's in line with what you're saying.
Mayor Jay, may I speak? So related to the agreement, the service agreement between the city and the county for law enforcement services, as you noted, that agreement is very old. it really does need to be updated, and we're taking a look at it right now. And I think this conversation certainly plays into our discussion about that agreement. But that's kind of a larger issue. I think for this immediate concern, I don't know that we're going to be able to find a solution to the dog pound issue. I mean, that we're working on the revision of the agreement and hope to be talking with you all about that fairly soon. Whether or not it's appropriate to fold that into this conversation, it feels like that's kind of a larger discussion, and I don't want to impede this conversation because this feels a little more urgent. But it's certainly something that, in the context of law, the provision of law enforcement services, that we need to be talking about.
Can I ask a couple questions, maybe? Currently, outside city limits, loose dogs. You guys don't pick them up, do you, Pat?
You kind of broke up there, Anton. What was the question again?
All right, sorry about that. I might end up just calling in here, but you guys don't pick up strays outside of city limits, do you?
No, we don't.
Okay, so my question is what? I mean, unless the county's going to change their ordinance for strays, what's the point of the county being involved? It seems like a city issue.
I guess.
Go ahead.
Okay, who's
I
up?
think it kind of goes back to what James was saying, and the mayor was saying, that through the law enforcement contract that we have with the city, we are charged with enforcing all of the ordinances, and one of the ordinances is the leash law. So that's, I believe, part of our involvement, and that's why we're here to help figure this problem out.
Anyone else? I mean, so then we've got, okay, Bev raised her hand. The real Bev Green.
Yeah, the real Bev Green. This is the real Bev Green. A couple of things, you guys have been talking. The city ordinance states, and I just pulled it up because I couldn't remember exactly the whole thing. Why Pat, I think, has been involved in this all along, is that under section 10-3 pound master, the chief of police shall be the city pound master. I'm assuming, I mean, I know Pat's title is sheriff, but I'm assuming that he's the chief of police, under the hired agreement. So I guess that's kind of why, I guess he's probably involved a lot, because he is considered, I guess, the pound master. A couple other things, and I think it's appropriate that the county's involved. And I'm kind of talking as the director of the Council on Aging and the hub down here too, working with the elderly people in the community. I've gotten a lot of calls from people who've died. Family doesn't know what to do with their animals. So they call Arrowhead Animal Rescue, and we'll take those animals in. Well, they get treated the same as an animal that's been picked up by leash law. We need to put them in the pound or someplace, and that's always been an agreement with the city, is that we can put those animals in the pound, and then, either try to wait till a family member comes, or, or we legally then can keep them for 5 days, and then we can adopt them out ourselves. But, and then we get them vet checked and everything too. So I think the numbers that you guys are talking about too are only those numbers that of animals that have been picked up in the city and released by the sheriff's department. Then you've got all these other animals, and part of my board, Gay, who's on the call right now, and Dale are working on these numbers from the last 3 or 4 years to come up with numbers of animals, other animals that we've taken in for various reasons. Somebody gets arrested. That whole list that was in that first letter that I sent you guys is a great example. And and those could be the city, they could be Schroeder, Grand Portage, all over. And I guess as a taxpayer, now I'm going to talk as a taxpayer. I guess as a taxpayer, I look at that as a community service, for everybody. Because what do you do with that animal, that somebody's died? What do you do with that animal? They still need to be taken care of until somebody can come and get them, or maybe they don't even have anybody. Or what do they do with that animal that somebody got arrested and they're going to jail? They may not have been arrested in city limits, but they got arrested somewhere else in the county. We would go in and take care of that animal for law enforcement or the community, everybody. And so I think it's kind of appropriate that the county is being talked about. But then, like Kelly, I'm a little frustrated that this has gone on this long, because the city has known about this for years, that this is going to have to come down. And now we're to the point where, we're stuck. We have no place to put these animals. I hope nobody dies, in a next week and they have an animal or a big cockatiel bird or something, because we've had them in, that we've gone in and helped with. I just hope that doesn't happen, because I don't know where these animals are going to go. So.
So Bev, you mentioned that there's definitely interest for the county to be involved in these conversations, in these negotiations. James and Pat, does the county have anything on record or like anything on the books that that requires them to be a part of those types of operations, or is that something that we've always just done because we didn't know what else to do? Because we could be digging into a different problem, or something else that we might be able to solve in a slightly different way. Or if we really do know what we're willing both the county and the city level to support, then we can get some more accurate numbers, and we can understand more of what we need as far as the facility is concerned. It seems like we're kind of bouncing all over the map as far as what we're actually required to do and what we have done and what we want to do. So those, and also what we're willing to pay for. So those things all seem to be in different places. And that might be part of the reason why this hasn't really, gotten legs and gone someplace, because we also don't know really where the responsibility lies, because everybody has a stake in this. So what do you think, you guys?
If I could, I actually need to log off for another meeting right now, but I do want to say we want to be a partner in this discussion, in finding a solution. And so, I will continue participating in this discussion. We'll continue looking for locations where we could site a new facility. And, we want to be a resource. I don't think this should be solely on the city's hands to resolve. But there are a lot of questions that we still need to answer to figure out what we can do and what we should do. So thanks for the opportunity to participate in the conversation tonight. I appreciate it.
Okay, we'll be in touch.
All right, take care.
So I guess I will chime in and probably answer the mayor's question. The county does have an interest in the pound. We have an ordinance, a dangerous animal ordinance, which closely mirrors the state statute for dangerous animals. And if an animal bites a human and the owner cannot produce vaccination records, current vaccination records, we are ordered to seize that animal and quarantine it for 10 days. So that's that's why I feel we have a stake in this as well. And like I said, I'm happy to help out in any way I can here.
That's super helpful, Pat. I apologize for breaking up earlier. Hopefully it's more clear now. I guess I understood the sheriff's department role as far as the city went and what you guys do, when there's a stray animal in town. But I think what Bev brought up and that information, that's kind of what I was wondering, is if the county was looking to maybe expand their ordinances or their, but the state standard that you talk about is interesting. And I guess that makes more sense on why the county's involved now. Can I also ask a question, either to the council and maybe Mike too, you might know better. Thinking again that this is now upon us after years of knowing about it. do we know, on the Tom Tabota lot, there's the staging area right now where they have all the stuff for the highway project, but on the other side of the driveway, the west side of the driveway, that's a different parcel, if I remember right. Is that correct?
If you mean it's got a different PID number on it, I doubt it. If you mean it's separated physically and appropriate for a different use, then absolutely. Yeah, and I think when we've looked at that property, we've thought both of those pieces would be developed separately. We've even looked at would City Hall or the liquor store go on the smaller piece of the two, the one you're talking about.
Yeah.
It's definitely a piece of property that kind of meets a lot of the needs for a facility like this. It also is appropriate for a lot of other things too. And so that's the issue that the EDA kind of ran into when they looked at the lot that we had been planning on. Is they said, well, we don't think this is the highest and best use we want to use this for. And I think needing municipal sewer for the building to be really effective limits the spaces that we have in town. I think we kind of learned that even more directly talking about housing. And the few that are left that are good for development are valuable and would be good for a lot of different developments. But I think that one in particular is something that we've looked at in the past.
And I know that that's got brought up with ideas for, relocation of the liquor store and some of those other different things as that conversation is bounced around. I think that the in-town aspect, as far as the cost of this, the location and access to city utilities compared to well and septic is a game changer in what the overall cost of this thing is going to be. Question on, it's outside of the business park, but I believe city-owned land. There was the first shot at the building that we have up at Tom Tabota. We looked at the spot up above the business park.
No, we were looking at lots in the business park, and those lots have since been sold off.
What about on
the stuff above the business park? Is a lot of different uses have looked at that space. There isn't really accessible water and sewer without a little more work up there.
At the end of the cul-de-sac, even?
At the end of the cul-de-sac, yeah. And you could, when that was looked at by the EDA to do housing on that piece of property, the engineers were talking about a pumping station to increase water pressure because that's elevation-wise as high as our water towers are.
Right. Okay. Just brainstorming.
Now, Mike, riddle me this. So all of the lots at the EDA or in the EDA park, they all require some type of stormwater mitigation. Is that correct? Or is it just if there's wetlands on them? I think it's for any like that's part of the.
Yeah, they all require a stormwater management plan, and that probably means they also require some kind of mitigation, like a pond for stormwater runoff. A lot of them would also require wetland mitigation. Although for a building the size we're talking about, I'm sure there's still a place that we could find in the business park that would work for the EDA board and that we wouldn't need to do wetland mitigation on. Having said that, it's still going to be, $10,000 to $25,000 just to do the engineering and potentially build a pond before we've even started building a building. So, and I think that's likely going to be true in almost any location we look at, that just getting the land and utility connections is not a cheap thing. I mean, that's why it's so difficult to build housing in town too. So
then wouldn't it be cheaper to be up in the area of the old Tom Tabota? We own the property. There's already utilities there. I mean, it used to house a large lodging structure. We're talking about a fairly small building. We own the land. We don't have to purchase anything. I'm missing why we could not have something small in that area. I can't imagine who would want to build a house next to our structure there. unless we're talking a motel or something, but we've waited too long. This is our responsibility to kind of figure out, and the county and animal advocates are willing to work with us. It was us who started the city pound. Why can't we find a spot somehow?
I feel like there were conversations, Bev, we'll get to you, and yeah, we'll get to you. I see your hand. I feel like there were conversations about putting it up at the, up in that area. And I, for some reason, it just never grew legs. Like it never moved beyond the like, hey, we could put it here. And then it was like, and then we looked at other options. I don't know exactly why that is, but, and maybe either Pat, you or Mike can jog my memory. But I know that had been discussed, and it was decided that it wasn't. It might just be like it wasn't the best use of the land, but I don't recall exactly what those conversations were.
I think if I remember right, that it wasn't so much that it wasn't. I mean, there's that's the question on what happens with that, but I think there was the conversation back that we talked about having it, basically adjacent to on the same large parcel where the new, maintenance facility is. And I think that we talked about the fact that volunteers have to come and go, and that's a gated off. It's, we have that, quote unquote secured. I don't think that there was been any reason why we couldn't do something on that west side and still retain that larger eastern of the entrance in there, the eastern part that they're using for staging right now for either resale or some other something, except for just like making that commitment again to like, that's what we want to have happen on that. Right. I mean, this has revolved around that conversation we had about what's going to happen with City Hall, what's going to happen with the business park, or excuse me, not the business park, with the liquor store. I mean, how many different iterations of like, are we going to, take the old property and look at development, right? This has been part of all those conversations. And I think it really just is going to take us to identify, okay, let's do it here. And, and then we'd have to deal with what the ramifications of that are, right? That there'll be fallout. We can't resell it, right? For commercial property on Highway 61 if we develop something there. Okay. But we still have another piece that's contiguous, right, on the downhill side, the east side of that driveway, that could be used for future development either for the city or for resale. I think it's just making that call and saying, yeah, we're going to do it right here, and getting agreement amongst us. And I think, some sort of agreement with the sheriff's department, the county, and, our other partners in this, animal advocates, to say that, yeah, they think that's a good fit. But I think ultimately it falls on one of the five of us to say, yeah, let's do this, and tell us why it's not a good idea, and let's go.
It strikes me that a possibility might be to use some sort of temporary structure, like a nicer mobile home or whatever, something that's, winterized and that kind of thing, since it's not being used that much. That might give us a little bit of breathing room so that we have something that we can use very quickly. And then look at folding the dog pound into any future building that we have up there, and know that that's going to be part of that in the future. It's our responsibility. We need to take care of it, and we can fold it into another building, since to my mind, it seems foolish to like build even a small building. That's still a lot of infrastructure for just the limited use that it would have. And that'd just be my 2 cents.
Pat, do you have anything to say about, what Anton says is, we just need to agree on some space and go for it. The question that was on the table was the land to the north of the public works facility, up the top of the hill. Do you have any recollections about conversations about that property or any feedback about it?
Yeah, I remember we talked about that, and from what I recall, I think the determination was pretty much what Anton explained, that it's a secure facility. Didn't want people going in and out of there. I can't remember if we talked about anywhere outside the fence. It's been so long, and to be quite frank, I've had so many conversations about this. I can't remember what we talked about 100%. But I guess that parcel up there is, whatever you guys think is it would work. Yeah, it would. It's your land, and it's up to you guys to decide what you want to do with it. There's one more spot I'm going to look at, basically up behind the law enforcement center. I don't know if it's going to be viable or not, because the county highway department is putting in a salt sand structure, and I don't know if there'll be enough space to squeeze a pond in there and then still have room for their loaders and trucks and everything like that up there. So that's about the last option I have, other than finding a place outside the city, whether it's just a little ways outside the city or not. We talked about that a little bit at our county meeting. And, if we had to spend $50,000 in a stormwater plan and a wetland mitigation, well, we'd have to spend that outside the city anyways for a well and septic. So it's kind of 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. But keeping it closer to the LAC and centrally located would be best for us and best for the animal allies.
Well, it's exciting to hear that there's another possible spot. Bev, what's your comments you got here?
Well, as I was just looking at what Pat, I think, is talking about. The county looks like they own, and I'm sure it's like law enforcement, the county garage or something back in there, that whole corner of the Gunflint Trail. And the EDA also has 3 lots right in that same area. So they're not within, the business park on the other side of the Gunflint Trail. They're on the law enforcement side. I wonder if that would be a possibility. I don't know what the wetland stuff is going on in there or not, but they're pretty small looking lots. And when I look at this, they're around the corner from law enforcement, like right across the street, I believe, from the business. Yeah, right across the street from the business park entrance. And it looks to me, I don't know if there's some trails back in there. The thing that I keep in mind is, the business park would be great because it'd be safe to walk animals. And I don't know if if you'd build there, if you can access, if there's trails back in there or not. There almost looks like there is. I'm looking at the plat map on the county right now, on the county website. So I don't know, and like Pat, you were talking about, they're putting up a sand building back there for sand and salt.
Yeah, the highway department's putting it up by where the gas pumps are and where they keep all the culverts and that.
Okay. Because the county looks like they own a lot of property right in there. I don't know where or how far back in there they're going with that building, but I don't know if that would be an option somewhere on that corner, or to look into. There's actually 3 lots right there that the EDA owns. I know, Anton, do you know what lots I'm talking about?
Yeah, I know, but they're squeezed in between the Gunflint and the city ditch there. It's all wet. But...
Well, there's 2 of them that look like they butt the Gunflint Trail. There is one there that is behind the city ditch, and then there's another. Peak Investment owns a little tiny parcel right there too. I don't know who they're from Montana. No idea who they are. But so I don't know if one of those 3 areas or 3 spots would be another possibility. Then we'd be out of the main big business park area.
I mean, I definitely think that that's something we should be entertaining a lot of different options. what Anton said, I've walked in that area quite a bit, and it's all wetland. Like there's not a single dry spot on that entire piece, which is really a bummer. So then we would be talking the same, like what Pat said, the same $50,000 for, a wetland plan and stormwater ponds and stuff like that. So that would be, we can certainly, look at that again. And the county, like you said, Bev, the county does have a bunch of land in there. It's just that there's a lot of activity going on in that land. We have to figure out what works for what we're trying to provide as well, for having volunteers go in there and everything. Go ahead.
What about the lot on the opposite side, the one that sold to Brad and Brooke Shannon, on the north side of the road? That lot sold, and then they backed out because of just the back and forth, and bought the old Legion building. So that lot, I think that was talked about with the EDA. I don't know where. I'm assuming people are asking or calling on this $50,000 stormwater management plan, but I built a building up there that I had an engineered stormwater plan, and the plan cost $2,500, and maybe it cost 10 grand to do the actual work in the retention pond. Granted, that was a few years ago, but I don't think engineering costs are going up the same way OSB prices are. So there's other places that we can look at, and I can put phone calls in if we want to look either at that one and just ask and see. I like the idea of keeping our options open up at the Tom Tabota, but we also know that that's very buildable. It's pretty straightforward. It also then, I haven't looked at that map since we probably made that purchase. Was that 6 years ago, 5 years ago? So exactly seeing how much space there is now after it's built out, to see how much space there is.
There's an acre
Is that
on the
all it is?
smaller piece.
Okay. So I don't know. That doesn't get us anywhere, I guess, tonight. But I think that, I don't know. Craig, you got anything? I don't know what your thoughts are. Should we ask the EDA anymore about if they'd be willing to part with that lot right along the Gunflint, right on the corner there? That's real close to law enforcement. Or do we, I can put some calls into some engineers and see what they would do for a plan on that. Especially if Mark's got drawings done, so we know what our footprint is, we know what our park lot is, we know what our impacts would be. It's a pretty quick phone call, I think, to get an idea. And maybe I'll be wrong,
No, I think that's I think you should check that out. But also, we're not looking at a large building here. And I don't know, Pat, you said something about, are there state regulations that we have to follow if we move ahead with a dog pound? Or is this something we just pour a slab, you put up like a garage package, you insulate it? I understand it's got to be heated, but I think if we're going to look at sites, and if they're going to be within sewer and water hookup, then we should look at sites where we can minimize the cost if we can. And if we can't, we can't. But, I think, there's three parties involved on this, and they all want to help. So I think financially, I don't think anybody's going to be strapped too much on budget or anything like that, especially if the county's willing to help and Animal Allies are willing to throw money into it. I just think right now we're at like a location process is where we're at right now. I think we all agree we need to do this, unless somebody else feels we shouldn't. But maybe what the participation is going to be. But it'd be nice if we can just do some brainstorming on research for a site, and maybe we can find something that, hey, that's perfect, let's do it. But I haven't really spent the time like driving around and actually looking at what we could do, at a site. But there, obviously there's lots of sites out there. They're just going to vary in what's going to cost to put infrastructure. That's all. But yeah, it's not a big building. you know, it's not, you know, we have people willing to donate time to build it and design it. You know, I think right now we're at the point of just finding a place where it makes sense to put it.
It looks like the wild card is the location, absolutely, because that'll dictate what we have to do for infrastructure, what we have to do for slab and foundation, and for other wetland situations. I saw that the two mics had unmuted themselves. Did you guys have something that you wanted to say?
Just that Mark's drawing of the building is about 20 by 30, if people haven't seen it.
So not big.
No, not too big, but quite a bit larger than the existing structure, but certainly not anything that would be difficult to find room for on an acre of property.
And I was just going to chime in that I thought that spot where Brad Shannon was going to go in, that to me seems like a really good spot, just location wise. I don't obviously know the wetlands there, but it seems like it'd be a good place to be, and you know, for walking dogs and the whole bit.
I think the benefit to.
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry.
Go ahead,
I
Anton.
think I could be wrong, but I think that portion of the business park has all been, it's all been mitigated. So that I think is, and that, I mean, it's not Alder, right? Like it's a downhill side of the Gunflint Trail on those little outlots that Bev brought up. I mean, it's open. So clearing, I mean, there's a lot of benefits to the buildability on that.
You know, the EDA board declined a different lot that was less suitable for building this. And I know there's 2 ADA board members in the room right now, but I can't help but think they'd have stronger concerns, the same exact concerns with those lots that you're talking about, Anton. Having said that, it seems like the clear next step here is to keep tracking down a few locations and see if we can't get them figured out. This is the process that we were already in the midst of. I mean, we were already looking at a lot, had some plans drawn up. This construction likely would have already been ready to get going right now if we hadn't run into just a few issues with that piece of property. So I think that's still where we're at, is we're looking for the right piece of property. There's a couple of options in the EDA worth tracking down. Pat's still looking at a piece that the county owns, and if we can't make any of those work, then it sounds like the council's at least interested in talking about the property along Highway 61. So that's my recommendation, is we keep working on that process, and that we don't really have much else to talk about tonight until we know where this is going to go and we can put a budget together.
We have it sounds like we have a lot of framework that's just waiting in the wings. That once we get a location nailed down, once we, like what Anton was saying, once we get a location nailed down, once we find a place that we're going to put this, then we can start moving things into fast forward, because we've already got, you know, contractors that are interested. We've already got designs that are pretty much ready to go. Yeah, I would agree. If we can kind of power through and find, and you know, Pat, do your due diligence for the county properties. Anton and Bev, you know, do your due diligence for the EDA properties, and then Mike and I and Patrick can do our due diligence for the city property. Then we can set it up as like, these are our options. These are things we can do. Pros and cons of each, whichever one is the cheapest and meets all of our needs is the one we go with. I mean, that seems to be a pretty reasonable way to move forward, unless I'm completely out of line.
Can I with a footprint as such as that, if thinking up at Tom Taboda, would you be able to kind of hug close to that fence and still have something else on the, you know, from that structure down to the highway as feasible for future? Or does anybody on the council have any issues with looking up there more? Or do we feel like we need to hold on to that? I guess I don't know if I heard any feedback on if people think that's a terrible idea to use some of that up there.
I feel like it's worth looking at. We need to find an answer, and the sooner we find an answer, the better. So I feel like it's worth, you know, taking a walk up there and taking a look at it. It can't hurt.
I agree with Kelly.
Do you want to just focus on that or do you want to keep looking at some of these other options? Because I think we can probably do them at the same time, but I think it's worth looking at some of the lots in the EDA and continue to look at the county lot while we're thinking about this. The space up there, it's about 120 feet of north-south dimension. So you're going to put a 20 by 30 foot building and a couple of parking spaces. You're going to end up with, you know, half of it probably being unusable for another purpose, but you're still going to have a decent sized piece of property that would be adjacent to the highway when you're done.
It would allow for an area to be fenced in and stuff too, right? So animals could get out, exercise, and it's right there on the walking trail. I mean, I know, you know, there's a loud noise, but it actually has a place where people go walk their animals. So,
I mean, I think I think we should definitely be looking into that. The only thing that I'm more interested in the EDA lots or the county property is proximity. And that's really the only concern or the only thing that would make me be like, yeah, if we could put it in one of those other spots, that would be sweet, because it'd be so much closer for the deputies to go there. And also proximity to that open area, to walk the dogs and to have a little bit more space there. So I think we should definitely keep looking at the city property, you know, go and get a plan going there. But, you know, Pat, if you're willing to keep that conversation going with the highway department about, is there room for a 20 by 30 building and a couple of parking spots, you know, boy, it'd be pretty okay too. So so does that seem like a place to march from? We can do that. I do think that we do need to push on this a little bit. You know, we can't just let this one be like, all right, we're just going to do this stuff and we'll see what happens. You know, we need to actually have some kind of a deadline on it so that we know by when we can plan on, you know, taking whatever option is the best that we have and going with it, because we're probably not going to have a perfect option. We need to figure out what we're willing to spend and what solves our problems and then when we can get started. So any other thoughts on it? Or Bev? Anton, you were first. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say I'll send a couple emails out here before the end of the week and on those parcels up at the business park. I can check down below the Gunflint too, just to see, because we could see how bad it could be if we go that way, and see what I can learn on that other lot, and maybe try and follow up with Howard and Mary as well to check the conversation on, you know, not using that stuff up there. So
Bev?
Excuse me. That's just what I wanted to see, if Anton could kind of take the move and, you know, talk to the EDA and see if we can't get this on our EDA agenda for the next meeting, and that. So thank you.
Now, one closing comment, and maybe this is in bad form because we're just getting to a wrap it up kind of place, but are all of the EDA lots delineated for wetlands? Like, do they know where the wetlands are identified?
yes.
That would probably be a pretty easy thing to just ask for the delineations for those lower.
I have it.
You have them?
Yeah, and they're all wet.
That's kind of what I figured, but
Yeah, the ones across the road for sure. Yeah. I mean, you know, Jay, you run through there. It's
a
wet.
lot.
It's wet. It's wet in August when there hasn't been rain. So it's yeah.
It's practically a bog. But anyway, okay. So we'll keep looking at that stuff. Get some pros and cons for those 3 different spaces. See if they're even available. And should we plan on having this on our next agenda? That gives us 2 weeks. That's not a lot of time, but it still gives us time to at least get an idea. I see one head nodding. I don't know. I think it probably is in our best interest to keep it moving. Craig?
Yeah, I think it's fine. Put it on the next agenda. It gives us 2 weeks to, you know, who knows, something might come out of this. And also I've been just kind of sitting here thinking, maybe perhaps you might find a private landowner that might have something that's suitable too, for purchase or donation. It's hard to say. I was just thinking, you know, there is other land out there. We're just focusing on city, county, but maybe there's something privately that it's a 20 by 30 building. Maybe it's something that would work. I mean, I just think checking options, that's all.
Well, I mean, we can certainly open that door, throw the shout out to the community.
Well, that would
and
just
say-
have to be, you know, talking to somebody. And if it's a possibility, you bring it to the council meeting, you know,
Mhm.
but just an idea.
Okay, that's a good idea. Any other comments on this? Closing comments? Well, thank you for a good conversation, everyone. We'll do some homework and we'll get back and talk about this at the next meeting. So,
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, Pat. Thanks for you guys taking the lead on some things. Anton.
both of the Antons. Okay, so we'll reset. We'll move back to other items on the agenda. So we pulled the Gunflint Tavern tobacco permit and the travel reimbursement policy update. So Michael, you can take over at this point for the tobacco policy. Let's take them one at a time.
Yeah. So for that, and I didn't see it written in here, but is this new or is this just a renewal?
It's new, but only because they didn't renew at one point. They've had a tobacco license in the past. They did for a long time. They had a humidor in the Raven, and they discontinued that because they weren't selling cigars anymore, and now they're requesting a new license.
Okay. All right.
And basically all they've had is they've just had the humidor in the Raven down there for selling cigars. That's what they've done in the past. I don't know what they want to do now, but that's what they've done in the past.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I guess, looking at what other municipalities have been doing in regards to tobacco, they actually have been moving in another direction and trying not to have tobacco be sold within city limits. And I'm not necessarily saying that we should go all the way there, but maybe we should start thinking about not renewing in the future and having that just try to bring down tobacco sales over a longer period of time, but to have that come to a close at some point. But anyway, for tonight's meeting, since they've had one, I'm not going to say we should pull it away, but I do think we should keep it in mind as something we may not want to have going forward.
And for context, we have had presentations from the T21, Tobacco 21 group from Cook County. And I think that we did have somebody else come and talk to us about like tobacco exemptions for the community. But the tricky thing about our location is that it's very limiting. It's very limiting. Not to say that I wouldn't, I don't smoke, so I don't know. I can't speak to it. But yeah, there have been some conversations in the past about that. So something we could certainly bring up in the future too. So we do have this. We do have this on the agenda to approve. So does anyone have a strong feeling about approving the Gunflint Tavern's tobacco permit?
I will make a motion to approve.
There's motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, move to the roll call vote. Anton, your vote.
Aye.
Kelly, your vote.
Aye.
Michael, your vote.
Aye.
Craig, your vote.
Aye.
I am an aye as well. Permit is approved. So then we'll move on to the next one. So Michael, you wanted to pull this one too, so you can bring it up, but I have a feeling I know what you want to say about this. So go for it.
Yeah, I just would like to have the per diem rate just follow the GSA so that it doesn't have to come back before us. It can just be automatic, that it will always readjust to whatever the current GSA is. And we don't have to do anything about it. Because if it's been 20 years, obviously nobody's been looking at it. But if we set it on automatic, I think that would be a cleaner way to go.
And I do believe that we have to approve this change every year.
Is that okay?
Do we?
We haven't looked at anything other than mileage rates though on an annual basis. So mileage, we've done an adjustment and just kind of mirrored what IRS has done, but with other meals and incidentals, we haven't made any changes to it.
Okay. Is there some reason why we can't have it automatic? Like, I'm just for my own knowledge.
No, I think you could set that policy. I mean, that seems pretty understandable and explainable. We don't necessarily look for that all the time, so it's actually a little more complicated, I think, for us than just letting it stay where it's at. But in terms of reasonableness, I like that option to just have it mirror the GSA.
So if I'm correct in my understanding of the situation, we would actually be talking about two motions. One motion would be the motion to approve the 2021 rates as presented by Finance Director Dunsmore, and the second one would be a motion to pin our reimbursement rates to the GSA. So I think that would probably be the most expedient way of dealing with that request. If there is someone who wants to make one of those motions, now would be a good time to do that.
I would so move.
Which one?
Both of them, but
Oh my gosh, we got to do them one at a time.
all right. Do the first one first. So we'll approve the first one for 2021.
2021 rates as adjusted by Finance Director Dunsmore. Is there a second for that motion? I'll second the motion. I'll do it. I beat you, Anton. Okay, so I second that one. Any other discussion for this?
I think the only discussion is if GSA does make a change, I think it's nice as a city council member, we are made aware of that. Just so we kind of know. I mean, isn't
Typically, I do this in my day job. Typically, this happens on a yearly basis.
every year?
I literally go in and Google it, punch in a zip code, and it'll tell you for your region areas. It tells you whether it's, urban or rural type things. We affiliate with the Duluth area. Usually it happens on a yearly basis. So typically if you're going to see what the federal mileage is for the next year, you can look and see what the GSAs are for the next year.
Right. I mean, I think that's a reasonable request that if we pin the adjustment to the GSA, then I think we could also just ask the administration to just let us know what that is. It would just be put it in a meeting packet so that we just know what's going on.
Well, and it's like we're doing tonight. We're making the motion to approve the GSA, but we're also being notified of federal rates. So I would expect every year, whether it's the first meeting in January or second or whatever, information's out and it would just be in our packet and shared with us.
Mm-hmm. Sounds reasonable.
Yeah.
So is there a motion for that?
Did you vote on this one yet?
This is say we got a vote.
Yeah.
I thought we did. All right, roll call vote. Anton, your vote.
Aye.
Kelly, your vote.
Aye.
Michael, your vote.
Aye.
Greg, your vote.
Aye.
I am an aye as well. Okay, 2021 rates are set. Now, is there another motion for the second thing?
For the second thing, yes, to pin the rate to the GSA annually and to have it part of our consent agenda, I guess, and so that we're notified that it happened. Unless we already said that, but I think that would be part of this motion.
Yep, I think that makes sense. Is there a second for that motion?
I'll second.
Okay, motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Anton, your vote.
Aye.
Kelly?
Aye.
Michael?
Aye.
Craig?
Aye.
I am an aye as well. So that motion carries. Cool. So then next, the last thing that we added to the agenda was an update for the city administrator job review. So Kelly, you want to take that one
I can. Last time we talked about the information that Chris had shared with us for Flaherty and the service they can provide to us. Jay and I were going to talk a little bit and review some things, which we kind of did. I sent Jay some updates, things that I thought we could easily change on our own, maybe before even, I mean, I guess we could work with Brandon too, but some information. So I don't know if council needs to see that, wants to look at that before we would move forward. I was curious how council wants to kind of proceed with this, what the council is interested in doing and going about it. But Jay and I did meet.
If anybody, does anybody have any thoughts on that? I mean, I can definitely weigh in as well on my thoughts on it. I just want to make sure everybody has a chance. Well, I'll just jump in, then you guys can go from there. Sorry, Anton. I say you can talk and then I interrupt you.
Well, I was going to say, go ahead and talk and we'll go from there.
Yeah. So when Kelly and I met, we talked about some of the updates to the job description that you know were things that would make it a lot clearer and also captured the gist of the job a little bit better, and also just bringing things into current legal terminologies. So some of that stuff is stuff that we could provide to Flaherty and Hood or anybody else that we wanted to hire to do this. To me, it seems like all of us city council members would be a part of that assessment process. I'm pretty sure of the job description, considering that all of us work with Mike. And I personally just don't feel super qualified to be doing a lot more of the work beyond what Kelly and I did on that Saturday, which was to look at the language and be like, hey, this stuff doesn't seem quite right. What can we do to make this stuff better? So considering that we would all be a part of the process and that we have a bid that would accomplish the goals, I mean, I don't see much trouble with moving forward with Flaherty and Hood, bringing the information that we've already gathered to that process so that we can inform it. So that's my 2 cents, but we can continue discussing it. Anyone else? Or we don't have to discuss it and we can just put it on the next agenda and we can have a little bit of time to think about it and do it at the next one. Anybody? This is riveting stuff, I know.
I'll share really quick with them, maybe just some examples, Jay, of what we talked about so they don't think it's anything huge or momentous. Something as simple as in Part B, it's knowledge, skills, and abilities for a city administrator. Number 1 in our current description says considerable knowledge of public administration. When you're looking at how do you define considerable, right? So my recommendation is we put demonstrated knowledge. That's a little bit more measurable than saying considerable, because 5 counselors could all interpret that differently. Demonstrated, we're asking someone to show us, whether it's by who we contact, that they've put on their resume as references, things that they list to us of what they've done, that would help, if we went out and Mike wins the lottery and heads to Hawaii to live on a beach and we're looking. So it was, some things are that simple, just to update. Another thing was, considerable ability to communicate orally and in writing. Again, kind of removing that word considerable and finding things that are a little bit more concrete. So that's kind of some of the stuff that I just showed Jay and talked about. Minimum requirements. Most of our stuff had 1 year or 3 years. Do we want to look at having somebody who has, instead of 1 year managerial, 3 to 5, if we were to go and replace? Obviously, our current administrator has nearing 20 years. So things have changed where we have some options. So that's the kind of stuff that we looked at and made suggestions of. So things that we can bring back to you, or we can just move forward. But just wanted to let you know what Jay and I had done.
I think that's really important too, Kelly. Thanks for sharing that stuff, that we get that information out so people know, like, this is really what we're working on. It's not So what does everybody think? Should we put this on the next agenda as well, so that we can look at how to move forward, or does anybody feel strongly about this right now?
Well, I was thinking, I mean, you guys are going to be giving this to Flaherty and Hood, right? And then they're going to be going over it and then giving it back to us. That's correct, right?
We haven't actually voted to do that. So Flaherty and Hood is they're the firm that gave us the bid.
Okay.
Because they're our city attorney firm.
Right.
And we haven't voted to accept that. For our last packet, so that offer was for $2,500, a maximum of $2,500. It listed a number of different services that would be provided for that firm, but there was a hard cap at $2,500 for services. So
Okay. All right. Yeah. I mean, I guess I would like to hear back from you guys and on the next go round.
as far as
Just what you guys are working on, because you're saying that you guys are going to continue to work, and then you'd bring that back to us. Is that what you're saying?
I'm not sure that there's much more that we could do. You know, I mean, like, our expertise in this is kind of maxed out right now. So, I mean, maybe this will fall on its face, but and I don't know, Kelly, I don't want to step on anybody's toes here, but I'll make a motion to hire Flaherty and Hood to do this work, with the understanding that the information that we've gathered will be included in it. And I think that, I guess that's my motion. So is there a second to that? And if there isn't, then it'll die for lack of a second, and then we'll know what we'll talk about this more. Honestly, it wouldn't hurt my feelings if it died for lack of a second. That just means we got to talk about it more. So Michael, you seconded it. All right. So now it's time for further discussion. Anybody have anything?
I'm happy to get it in front of them, and I guess I would defer just to Kelly if she feels like it's if you feel comfortable with what you and Jay have discussed and passing it on. And otherwise, I'd say, yeah, let's get it over to Brandon and see what he can do.
I do feel good. Like I said, I've worked with a few other people, colleagues of mine, as to how to go about this. So I feel good handing this to Brandon and probably having a conversation with him. Some of the legwork and the things we do also can save us money. I know in the scope of things, $2,500 is not a lot of our budget, right? But it wasn't something that we actually had budgeted for 2021. So if there's ways and things that we can do, I don't have the proposal here in front of me, but I think, like Chris had told us before, we can work with them. There's parts of the proposal we can take and do, and there's parts we can leave out if need be. So I think the end goal is to create a way to evaluate and do a performance evaluation for a city administrator. So the very first thing, obviously, was trying to get a job description that was brought up to date, and having that done, having the council feel good about it, and then building a format to do an evaluation, because it's not something that's ever been done before, and then have something in place that moves forward and obviously can be changed with the times, but over the next course of 100+ years. I mean, I'm hoping that this is something that carries on, because it's a way to have a conversation with the city administrator and then figure out how exactly do we do raises with an administrator. What kind of, are we allowed to put incentives in place? Did they do a good job? Did they do a great job? Were they horrible? Did they meet their goals that we put in place and discussed with them? So this is just a stepping stone, and I feel good about it. So
I would agree, Kelly. I pretty much mirror everything that you said. It's a bit of a change that we need to do the way we do business on a regular basis. Anything else?
Mayor, I just have one suggestion perhaps, and I think maybe you are already aware of this, but it seems like the process should really just start with you and Kelly and maybe Mike, but maybe you and Kelly alone, just giving Brandon a call and discussing what you want to do. And because, again, updating the job description may not take a lot of time. I mean, and Brandon is, very, very knowledgeable about these issues in terms of, what's in an administrator's job description and those kinds of things. So, I mean, I think just having a conversation with him about that would be beneficial. And, again, I think you could send it to him before the call you have that you're going to schedule with him, and then let him look at it quick, and then you can just have a call with him. And like I said, it may be something that's going to take, very little time in terms of the job description. And then, in terms of, developing other things after that about what the performance evaluation process is, certainly you can have that conversation with Brandon as well.
Very cool. Thanks, Chris. Anything else? If not, go to the roll call vote. Anton, your vote.
Aye.
Kelly, your vote.
Aye.
Michael, your vote.
Aye.
Craig, your vote.
Aye.
I am an aye as well. Motion carries. All right. So I believe that's all of the added stuff that we added to our agenda. So now it's time for council and staff reports. So we'll start with you, Anton.
I don't have anything.
Okay, Kelly.
Just to update that last night I attended the first Passion Pit Advisory Committee meeting. There are 11 members of it, and Tim Nelson, he's kind of the ex officio of it for us. They had 21 applications of people who were interested in being on that. So there was a fair amount of interest, which is good. They had an agenda set. We kind of got a little waylaid from it, and I did have to leave after about an hour and 45 minutes. But trying to work on some short-term goals, as many of you know, through probably either the newspaper, WTIP, Boreal, something, Grand Portage has reservation. The tribe has contacted MnDOT about potentially, I don't know if it would be actual purchase or if MnDOT would return the property itself, the piece that's in question owned by MnDOT, back to the tribe. Someone else who was on the meeting last night said that they had contacted Dwayne Hill from MnDOT, and whatever will happen, whether the outcome is that the county would like to buy it, maybe one individual buys it, whether Grand Portage would either purchase it or have it turned over to them, the process could take 1 to 2 years. And that means we have to come up with some maybe short-term resolution, because already the expected numbers for this summer's visitors on the lodging aspect are above last year. I think the number was somewhere between 20 and 25%. So as we know, last year, while we welcomed visitors, it was a stressful year for people as far as the areas that were probably littered more than normal, destruction of properties, whether it be private or public land, and just a lot of people that were doing different activities that maybe they hadn't done before and weren't really aware of the proper way to take care of things. So there's short-term goals that need to be put in place to try to figure out how do we best handle this to try to keep property owners in the area feeling comfortable, keep it maybe available to public for use, and then honor that it was originally settled and was Chippewa City by the Native American ancestors. So, and then what would be long-term goals? So there was a lot of discussion, and there was discussion as to how they are going to get public comment period, because we aren't meeting in person, everything is by Zoom, and what are some of the best ways for that? So it was a very healthy and hearty discussion. We are going to meet again. We have planned for the second and fourth Monday of each month right now in the short term, setting each meeting at a 2-hour limit. So we'll see where it goes, and I will keep you updated, but that was last night's first meeting.
Very cool. Thank you very much. Michael, updates?
Yeah, so the library board met, and it sounds like the soft opening that they had planned has been going well. They've numbers haven't gotten too high that they had to turn anybody away. Yeah, it sounds like it's gone very well. And we're now getting ready with the budget operational requests for the city and the county coming up here. And then the ARDC also met and approved some of the CARES funding that had been coming through for a number of businesses. One of them in our local area here for the art colony, it is approved, but the paperwork didn't get done, so it's not going to get done until the next cycle. But in the next month or so, it'll come through, and so that was exciting to hear for them. So it's all good.
Cool. That's it? Cool. Craig?
I have nothing that's happened in the past, except I forgot to mention at our last meeting something from the PUC, where the PUC was working on a project prior to me getting on the board, but they were working with Simca to fulfill the 65 kW allotment that they give us. And so the PUC voted to move ahead to finish the 20,000 kW solar panel system that'll be located in front of the Public Works Garage at a site. So that bid was approved, and the site selection was already selected. So that's going to move ahead. And that is, I think, we have a park board meeting coming up. So that's all I have.
Great. Thanks, Craig. The only update that I have is on, I had my first post-board meeting, Peace Officer Standard and Training meeting last Thursday, and that was, boy, there's a lot of stuff going on in that meeting. We heard from a lot of people and discussed some legislation. I did an interview with Rhonda Silence on this as well. I do believe that the work of the post board is really, really important, and I'm excited to be a part of that group. So in the future, I'll likely just bring my updates from that to the board as well, or to the council as well, even though that's not something that I was assigned to by the council. So if you'd like to keep hearing about that, I certainly can. Anybody else? Mike, Kim, Patrick?
Couple quick updates. For those of you who were not able to listen in on MnDOT's public meeting, they're planning on starting a little bit early. They'll be May 6th. They'll be starting to do removals, and Monday, May 10th, they'll be fully into construction. So before your next meeting starts. We also had a pre-construction meeting for the break wall project, which will also be going on this summer, but it sounds like probably not for another 6 to 8 weeks. They're not going to start that right away. You might have seen on the upcoming meeting schedule that we have a question mark about where the location of next meeting is going to be. So we have a concept for meeting in person in the city council chambers if folks are still interested in doing that. Just two caveats about that. One, there's been some legal questions about how some meetings are happening in the state when it comes to mixing of in-person and not in-person. And so I don't know that I have a great contingency plan in place for if we open the doors and 50 people want to come in the building, and what do we do about that? And then secondly, of course, we're still under an indoor mask order from the governor, so you'll have to be wearing masks when you're in that meeting. So that's we're just planning on doing it that way, and unless you all tell me forget it, we're going to make the next meeting in person. After that, we'll see how it goes, right? The Planning Commission then will be meeting next week, and they'll have 3 public hearings. So it sure looks like it's going to be a fairly busy season for local construction projects as well, small and large. So that's all I've got.
Okay. Well, what do you think, everybody?
Can I ask one quick question? I noticed the stoplight on the Gunflint at 5th and 5th was on today. I did have a message this evening that somebody almost got T-boned there today. Is that MnDOT who needs to be conveying information to people? I want to kind of direct them because they weren't hollering at me, but they're like, hey, the city didn't send out any information. And I'm like, I think it's MnDOT's to do.
Yeah, and that's something that you can always direct people to talk to Project Manager Ed at MnDOT, and he can answer any questions about that. And of course, that intersection is something that the county and MnDOT are cooperating on. So it's got to trickle down quite a long ways before we have anything to say about it to folks, I guess.
Does anybody know, and maybe Anton would, is the 4-way stop in place on the Gunflint and 5th where it was last year by law enforcement? Did that take place?
As soon as you said that, I was like, oh my God, I wonder if I ran that stop sign down on the Gunflint at 7 today. I'm sure I did if it is, because I didn't stop. I'll pay attention tomorrow, I guess. I didn't even think of that on, yeah.
But make sure to get those flashing lights on there. So, yeah. Well, here we go. Time to readjust.
Can we share that on our city webpage, that this, or on our city Facebook page or somewhere that is operating? Or is that totally up to MnDOT? Just, I don't know. How many
yeah,
people
we can. Sure, we can.
That'd be great. Patrick, you could put it on the community page or something too, just so it gets out there. I'm sure someone would pick it up, but it'd be nice, you know, on Facebook.
Thanks, guys, very much.
Will do.
Thanks.
Cool. Anything else? Hearing nothing, we have completed all of our work. Thank you for a very good, productive meeting tonight. We will have some homework to do between now and our next meeting, and we'll see you in a couple weeks. We are adjourned.
Thanks, everybody.
Have a good night, everyone. Bye.